The noise of the vacuum cleaner mixed with the clinking of glasses being arranged in the main lobby of the Imperial Hotel. Clara held the handle of the equipment tightly, trying not to think about how cold she felt because of the air conditioning, which was too cold for someone wearing only a simple maid's uniform. She glanced at her watch every now and then, hoping that her shift would end soon. Suddenly, the cell phone in her pocket began to vibrate. She froze. It was against the manager's rules to answer calls during working hours at that hotel. The rules were so strict for cleaning staff that it seemed like any mistake could cost her her job. But when she saw the number on the screen, her heart raced. It was the call she had been waiting for weeks. The university, in Paris, where she had applied for a scholarship for a master's degree in simultaneous translation. It's now or never, ... She whispered to herself, looking around to make sure no one was seeing her. She hid behind one of the lobby's enormous marble columns and answered, her voice almost cracking with nervousness. "Hello, this is Clara Mendez." On the other end, a woman's voice sounded soft but firm and, to everyone's surprise, she spoke in perfect French. "Bonjour, Mademoiselle Mendez. Ici l'Université de la Sorbonne." Clara straightened her posture and answered in the same language, with a fluency that no one in the hotel would have imagined she had. "Bonjour, Madame, c'est un plaisir de vous entendre." For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. She talked to the woman about the details of the documentation, answered questions about the research project, and even smiled when she heard that her application was among the finalists. This could be the opportunity to fulfill the dream she had had since she was a child, to work with languages at international events. But the bubble burst when Clara noticed a strange silence around her. She slowly raised her eyes and felt her stomach sink. Across the room, an elegant man in a dark suit was watching her curiously. It was Leonardo Vasconcelos, the owner of the hotel and one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. Next to him was the manager Sylvia with her arms crossed, and an expression of pure disdain. "I have to hang up now." "Merci beaucoup, je vous contacterai plus tard," Clara said hurriedly, trying to maintain her composure as she ended the call. "Mendez, in my office." Now Sylvia's sharp voice echoed through the room, making all the employees stop what they were doing to watch the scene. Clara swallowed hard. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. She knew that this simple call could change her life, but it could also cost her her job. And at that moment, she still had no idea that the situation that seemed like the beginning of a disaster was, in fact, the first step towards the biggest turnaround of her life. The path to the manager's office seemed like an endless corridor. Clara felt the heavy gazes of her colleagues fixed on her back, some with pity, others with a slight smile of barely concealed satisfaction. At the Imperial Hotel, one slip-up was enough to be the talk of the staff for days, and she knew if Sylvia was furious, it was because she would take advantage of every second to humiliate her. Upon entering the room, Clara took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. The air there was colder than that of the lobby, and the smell of expensive perfume mixed with old paper seemed suffocating. Sylvia was sitting behind a desk, tapping her red-painted fingers on a report. Her eyes sparkled with irritation. "Mendez, you know very well what the rules are, don't you?" The manager's voice was low, but full of venom. "I know, Mrs. Sylvia, but it was an important call." Clara tried to argue, in a calm tone. "Important?" Sylvia raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. "To whom? To a chambermaid? Since when does a cleaning lady have too many urgent matters to wait until the end of her shift?" Clara felt her face burn, but she swallowed her pride. It wasn't the first time Sylvia had treated her with contempt. For the manager, a black woman from the outskirts of the city should never have aspirations beyond scrubbing floors and making beds. "I apologize. It won't happen again," Clara said, her voice almost breaking. But Sylvia didn't want an apology. She wanted blood. "It won't happen again because you're going to spend the next 3 months cleaning the bathrooms at the convention center." A cold smile formed on the manager's lips. "There, you can answer as many calls as you want, as long as you finish disinfecting every tile." Clara felt her heart sink. The convention center was the punishment most feared by employees. Endless corporate events, huge bathrooms to clean, double shifts with no overtime. It was the kind of punishment that made many quit. "And be thankful I didn't fire you right now." Sylvia stood up, closing the report with strength. "You can leave." Clara left the room with trembling hands and teary eyes. At that moment, the only thing she wanted was to go home and cry alone, far from all those eyes that followed her like invisible knives. But what she didn't know was that, outside, Leonardo Vasconcelos, the billionaire owner of the hotel, was still thinking about the firm voice she had heard moments before. And, in silence, he was already beginning to draw up a plan that would forever change the destiny of that chambermaid that the world insisted on ignoring. That night, Clara could hardly sleep. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she stared at the literature diploma hanging on the peeling wall of her small room. For years, that paper had seemed like a cruel reminder of buried dreams. She thought about the scholarship and the future she could have, but everything seemed so distant as she cleaned hallways that didn't even seem to notice her existence. The next morning, Clara arrived at the hotel earlier than usual. She wanted to prove to herself that, despite the humiliation, she could still maintain her dignity. She went to the convention center and began to clean the huge bathrooms with automatic movements. Each tile she scrubbed seemed to take away a bit of her hope. Until, suddenly, the voice of Jennifer, the head receptionist, sounded behind her. "Clara, HR is calling you, immediately." Clara frowned. HR, that could only mean one thing: dismissal. She took a deep breath and put down the bucket, trying not to let her nervousness get the better of her. As she rode the mirrored elevator up to the top floor of territory for cleaning staff, her heart pounded in her chest. The executives next to her didn't even look at her. It was as if she were invisible. When the doors opened, Clara was greeted by an elegant assistant, who led her into a luxurious room. The air smelled of expensive wood and imported coffee. In the center, seated behind a huge desk, was Leonardo Vasconcelos. He looked up from his laptop and said in a calm, firm voice, "Sit down, Clara." She obeyed, her hands trembling. "Dutch, French, English, Spanish, and even Mandarin?" he asked, sliding a resume across the table. "Is that true?" Clara's eyes widened. "How did you—" "I asked HR for your file yesterday, as soon as I heard you on the phone," he replied, looking at her seriously. "Tell me, a woman with a degree in literature and fluent in 6 languages, what is she doing cleaning the bathrooms in my hotel?" Clara swallowed hard. "I sent dozens of resumes to the international relations department of this hotel. I never got a response. I also tried internal transfers." But she hesitated. "They were always rejected by manager Sylvia and director Almeida." Leonardo sighed, his eyes dark. "That's what I feared," he murmured. Then he leaned forward, crossing his fingers. "Tomorrow a conference with Chinese and Dutch businessmen begins. I need someone who speaks both languages fluently, and who truly understands how to deal with different cultures." Clara blinked, confused. "Do you want me to clean the conference rooms?" she asked, with a hint of sarcasm. Leonardo smirked. "No, Clara. I want you to be the international relations coordinator for the event. Starting salary, 20,000 reais per week, starting today." Clara almost dropped her bag on the floor. The proposal was so absurd that it seemed like a dream. "Why me?" she whispered, tears threatening to well up. "Because you have what I need, and because I suspect that there is something very wrong going on inside my hotel." Clara held her new name tag in her hands, unable to believe what was happening. International Relations Coordinator Temporary. That was what it said. But to her it seemed like an impossible title. Never in her worst nightmares did she imagine that the same hotel where she scrubbed bathrooms would now treat her like someone important. As she walked along the executive floor with Leonardo Vasconcelos, she felt the curious and even hostile looks of some managers and secretaries. When the elevator opened on the 18th floor, a heavy silence filled the hallway. Mendez, Sylvia's sharp voice echoed like a razor. She was standing there, holding a folder, her eyes wide when she saw Clara without her blue cleaning uniform. "What are you doing here without authorization?" Clara calmly raised her head, trying to hide her nervousness. "I'm working, Miss Sylvia." "Working?" The manager let out a sarcastic laugh. "Up here, with that badge. There must be some mistake." Leonardo interrupted before the situation could get worse. "There's no mistake, Sylvia. I promoted you myself. Clara is now in charge of international relations during the conference." Sylvia turned pale. She opened her mouth to protest, but the hotel owner's firm gaze silenced her. But she, the manager stammered, unable to find the words. "She is a qualified professional, fluent in 6 languages and with an impeccable CV," Clara added, keeping her tone calm. "My file has been in the hotel's HR department for 6 years. Maybe you've never read it." Sylvia stood still, her face as red as a tomato. Clara walked on without looking back. For the first time in a long time, she felt like they regained some of her dignity. Hours later, Clara was already in the conference room reviewing materials for the next day's event. As she analyzed the translations of the documents in Mandarin, a strange feeling came over her. The words were correct, but something sounded offensive. She reread them, and her heart raced. The expressions used in the contracts could be interpreted as very serious cultural insults by Chinese businesspeople. "My God," she muttered to herself. "Did you find a problem?" asked a male voice behind her. It was Leonardo, watching her closely. Clara took a deep breath. "Yes, whoever did these translations doesn't speak formal Mandarin. These mistakes could cause a diplomatic disaster tomorrow." Leonardo frowned. "That's serious. Director Almeida assured me that he hired the best translators." Clara hesitated for a moment, but decided to speak. "With all due respect, sir, someone is lying." That night Clara could barely sleep, sitting on the worn sofa in her small apartment. She mentally revisited everything she had seen during the day. The poorly translated contracts, the expressions that bordered on insulting, and the certainty that none of it was just an innocent mistake. She opened her laptop and began researching the names of the companies responsible for the translations. It didn't take long for her to find her first clue. One of them belonged to a niece of Director Almeida. With no experience in Mandarin, She charged exorbitant fees and delivered mediocre work. Clara felt her stomach churn. Now it makes sense. That's why they blocked all my transfers, she thought, slamming her laptop shut. The next morning, Clara arrived early at the conference hall. With her badge hanging around her neck, she looked like a different person, but inside, her heart was beating fast. As she reviewed the corrected materials, she heard whispers behind her. I want her out of here before she causes any more trouble, Almeida's harsh voice said. Don't worry. Sylvia replied with a venomous smile. I'll find a way to trip her up. Clara pretended not to hear, but each word felt like a knife in her back. She knew that, if she exposed the scheme, she would be messing with powerful people. But if she remained silent, million-dollar contracts could be lost and she would continue to be seen as just the maid who didn't know her place. When Leonardo appeared, she took a deep breath and made a decision. Mr. Vasconcellos, she began, her voice firm, I need to show you something. He looked at her curiously. What is it, Clara? It's not just about bad translations. It's much worse than that, he said, sliding a folder with evidence across the table. There's a scheme inside the hotel. Favoritism, overpricing, discrimination, and I have proof. Leonardo leafed through the documents, his expression becoming more serious with each page. Do you have any idea what you're talking about? He asked, his tone almost somber. Clara nodded, without looking away. I do, and I know that if I speak I could lose everything. But, if I stay silent, the truth will also be buried. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze in the room. Leonardo stood up slowly, walked to the window and stood in silence, looking at the city outside. Clara, you have more courage than many of my directors, he said, turning to her. I knew something was wrong, and now I'm sure. He sighed deeply before concluding. From now on, you are under my direct protection, and together we will expose all of this. Clara left the meeting room with trembling hands, holding the folder of documents as if it were a shield. For the first time, she felt that someone powerful was on her side, but deep down, she knew the game was far from over. If Almeida and Sylvia found out what she and Leonardo were planning, they would do everything they could to silence her. As she walked down the hallway on the executive floor, she heard hurried footsteps behind her. It was Sylvia, her face hard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So that's it, the manager said, crossing her arms. Are you going to try to play the heroine now? Clara kept her tone calm, but her voice carried a firmness that Sylvia didn't expect. I'm just doing what's right. Sylvia came closer, so close that Clara could smell the cloying scent of artificial roses. Listen carefully, young lady. People like you don't last up here, and if you keep meddling where you shouldn't, you'll end up back where you belong, or worse. Clara didn't answer. She just lifted her chin and walked on without looking back. But inside, her heart was beating so hard it felt like it was about to jump out of her mouth. That afternoon, Leonardo called Clara into his office. On the desk was a pile of confidential documents and his expression was serious. Clara, what you brought is just the tip of the iceberg, he said, showing her spreadsheets with inflated payments and suspicious transfers. I hired an auditing firm to investigate further. But I need you to continue participating in the conference as if nothing was happening. Do you want me to pretend that everything is normal? She asked, incredulous. Exactly. Almeida and Sylvia can't suspect anything. Not yet. The next day, Clara was impeccably dressed in an elegant blazer, moving among the Dutch and Chinese businessmen in the conference hall. She exchanged languages with ease, resolved cultural misunderstandings, and even drew smiles from executives who were used to keeping a cool face. But while she was mediating a conversation, she noticed Almeida from afar, watching her with narrowed eyes. Beside her, Sylvia was whispering something and the two of them were laughing discreetly. During the coffee break, Clara received a tray of coffee from a nervous intern, but when she smelled the liquid she noticed a strange odor, as if something had been added to the drink. Could it be paranoia, she thought. Even so, she discreetly left the cup on a table and asked for another. Hours later, already in her improvised office, Clara called Leonardo. Mr. Vasconcellos, I think they're trying to sabotage me. Don't worry, he replied, his voice firm. Tomorrow we'll take the next step, but be prepared. When the truth comes out, there will be no turning back. And on the other side of the corridor, hidden in the darkness, Sylvia listened to the conversation through the crack in the half-open door, with a look of pure fury. The next morning, the air in the Imperial Hotel seemed heavier. Employees whispered in the hallways and directors hurried along with folders in their hands. Something was about to happen and no one knew exactly what. Clara fixed her hair, took a deep breath, and stepped into the elevator toward the main auditorium. Beside her, Leonardo Vasconcellos kept his gaze steady, but his clenched jaw betrayed the tension. Are you sure you want to do this now? She asked in a whisper. It's now or never, he replied without hesitation. Today the truth will echo through every wall of this hotel. When the elevator doors opened, Clara felt the eyes on her. Auditorium was packed. Directors, managers, department heads, and even some foreign businessmen invited to the closing of the conference. In the back, Sylvia and Almeida whispered to each other with nervous smiles. Leonardo went up on stage, followed by Clara. He adjusted the microphone and, in a firm voice that filled the room, said, "Today we are not here just to celebrate the success of the conference. We are here to talk about something much more serious." The screen behind him lit up, displaying graphs and documents. "In recent years, this hotel has suffered from a scheme of discrimination and corruption that has cost our company millions." A murmur ran through the audience. Sylvia stiffened in her chair, while Almeida slowly turned pale. "Favoritism in hiring, overpricing of services, systematic blocking of internal talent," Leonardo continued. "And all of this done by the people I trusted the most." He signaled to Clara. She walked up to the stage with firm steps and took the microphone. "For 6 years, I tried to get a transfer to the International Relations Department. I'd sent 12 requests and all were denied. Meanwhile, translation contracts were awarded to people with no experience, like Director Almeida's niece." "That's a lie," Almeida shouted, standing up suddenly. "This woman wants to destroy my career." "Silence." Leonardo's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Don't you dare speak. We have proof that you received improper payments and blocked the promotion of qualified employees out of pure prejudice." Clara held up a folder with copies of the fraudulent emails and contracts. "Here's the truth," she said, staring at Almeida. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. Even the sound of the air conditioning seemed to have disappeared. Leonardo then concluded, with the coldest tone he had ever used, "As of this moment, Mr. Almeida is dismissed for just cause, and Manager Sylvia suspended until the investigation is concluded." Security guards appeared on the sides and accompanied Almeida, who left furiously, shouting incoherent words. Sylvia, pale and trembling, just lowered her head. At the back of the auditorium, the cleaning staff, the same ones who had been ignored so many times, began to applaud timidly. Soon the sound grew until it turned into a deafening round of applause. Clara felt her eyes well up. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. The auditorium was still echoing with applause when Clara stepped off the stage next to Leonardo. Cleaning and kitchen staff were smiling, some with tears in their eyes. For the first time, someone like them was up there, being applauded not for cleaning the floor, but for cleaning up the corruption in the place. Leonardo stood in front of the microphone once more and, with a slight smile on his face, announced, "I would like to introduce to everyone the new Global Director of International Relations of the Imperial Hotel, Dr. Clara Mendez." The announcement was followed by a wave of shock. Directors whispered, unable to hide their astonishment, while the audience applauded with a standing ovation. Clara felt her heart race. It was hard to believe she was hearing this. She, the same woman who had spent 6 years being ignored with a broom in her hands, now had a gold badge hanging around her neck. Later, in the luxurious office on the 20th floor, which was now hers, Clara sat in a leather chair, looking out at the city view through the glass window. The skyscrapers reflected the evening light, and the city seemed so far away from the girl who grew up on an unpaved street. She picked up her cell phone with trembling hands and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Mom," she said as soon as the call was answered. "Clara." Her mother's voice sounded tired, but loving as always. "Are you okay, daughter?" Clara smiled with tears in her eyes. "Mom, I did it. I'm not a chambermaid anymore. Now I'm the hotel manager." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then her mother began to cry softly. "I always knew," she said, her voice breaking. "I always knew that you were too big for the world to try to diminish you." Clara wiped away a tear that was stubbornly falling. "Thank you for never letting me give up, not even on the days when I thought about giving up on everything myself." The next morning, Clara gathered the entire hotel staff in the auditorium. She wanted this to be the first of many changes. "There are hidden talents in every department of this hotel," she said, looking the employees in the eye. "People with degrees, dreams, who never had a chance because someone decided they weren't good enough." She paused and concluded, "That's over. Starting today, we're going to build a place where everyone can grow and no one will be invisible again." The applause began timidly, but soon became deafening. Over the next few days, Clara transformed the executive floor into a veritable battlefield, but this time, it was a war for justice. Sitting at her new desk, with a panoramic view of the city, she reviewed old files, forgotten employee names, and promotion requests that never made it to the top. Beside her, Leonardo smiled approvingly. "You know what impresses me most, Clara," he said. "It's not just your intelligence, it's your courage." Clara took a deep breath, keeping her gaze steady. "I spent years being ignored. I don't want anyone here to feel the same way I did." Clara created an internal program to identify employees with hidden skills. Receptionists with degrees in business administration, waiters who spoke 3 languages, security guards with technology degrees. She discovered a goldmine of talent that was stuck in their roles out of pure prejudice. In 1 week, 37 employees were promoted. The cleaning staff was the most excited. They never imagined that someone low-level could open doors for everyone. However, not everyone was happy with the changes. One rainy morning, Sylvia barged into Clara's office without knocking. "So that's it," she said, her eyes flashing with hatred. Do you think you're better than the rest of us just because the boss decided to give you a gold star? Clara remained calm. She rose from her chair elegantly and walked over to the manager. It wasn't the boss who gave me anything. Sylvia, I have earned every step I have taken here. I have earned it with study, effort, and yet you try to destroy me. Sylvia laughed contemptuously. Do you think you will last? People like you never last at the top. Clara approached, keeping her tone firm. Well, I will prove to you that people like me not only last but change the world around them. At that moment, Leonardo entered the room. Sylvia, your presence is no longer needed here, he said, his voice firm. You are officially dismissed from the company. Sylvia's face lost its color. She opened her mouth to protest, but the security guards were already at the door, waiting to escort her. Before leaving, Sylvia gave Clara one last furious look. You will regret it. Clara just raised her chin and replied, the only regret I have is not having spoken sooner. Months have passed since that day in the auditorium, and the Imperial Hotel has never been the same again. Voices now echoed through the once cold walls of the building. The voices of receptionists who had become managers, housekeepers who were now supervisors, waiters who presented reports in 3 languages. Clara walked through the lobby, elegant in her navy blue blazer, with her vice president of diversity, an international relations badge hanging around her neck. At every step, employees rose to greet her with respect and admiration. She always responded with a warm smile. That afternoon, a special event brought everyone together in the auditorium. Clara took the stage, where a screen displayed the results of her inclusion program. 147 employees promoted, international contracts renewed, and financial growth that exceeded all expectations. A year ago I was cleaning the hallways of this hotel, she said, her voice firm but choked with emotion. And not because I didn't have other qualifications, but because someone decided I wasn't good enough to be up here. The silence in the audience was absolute. Some of the cleaning staff were crying, others beaming with pride. Today, I want to tell each of you, never let anyone make you feel invisible. Your talent does not depend on anyone's recognition. She paused, took a deep breath and looked up at the ceiling, as if speaking to someone far beyond the auditorium. Mom, I did it. All your sacrifice was worth it. Tears streamed freely down Clara's face, and the audience erupted in a standing ovation. That same day, Clara announced the creation of a social program to train and hire people from marginalized communities. The initiative was called the Open Window Project, because according to her, sometimes all it takes is a small window of opportunity to change someone's destiny. And as the sun set over the city, Clara looked out the window of her 32nd floor office with a serene smile. I spent years being ignored, she thought. Now it's my turn to make sure no one else has to go through what I went through. Down in the lobby, a young intern looked at Clara's newly hung portrait on the wall next to the hotel's great founders and whispered to herself, if she can do it, so can I. And so it was that a simple chambermaid became a symbol of justice, courage, and transformation, not just at the Imperial Hotel but across an entire